Two frozen worlds at opposite ends of the earth. One carved by humans who refuse to leave. The other, a continent where humanity barely exists. Siberia. Antarctica. The names alone feel cold. But what do we really know about these places? For most, they're synonyms for ice and emptiness. Wastelands where nothing grows, where life shouldn't be possible. And yet, in Siberia, cities rise from permafrost. 300,000 people wake each morning to temperatures that would kill in minutes. They drive cars, go to work, raise families, all while the air itself tries to freeze them solid. In Antarctica, there are no cities, just stations. Outposts staffed by scientists who volunteer to spend months in isolation, where the sun vanishes for half the year and the cold rewrites the rules of physics. This isn't a story about which place is colder. It's a story about what cold does to land, to life, to people who dare to exist where the planet says no. Two mirrors of ice. Two experiments in survival. This is the ultimate Cold War. Yakutsk. On paper, that fact alone should make it impossible. In winter, the mercury doesn't just drop, it plunges. Minus 50 degrees Celsius is common. Minus 60 degrees Celsius happens. At that point, cold becomes something else entirely. When the temperature falls, Yakutsk disappears. Not literally, but beneath a veil of fog so thick you can't see 10 meters ahead. The cold squeezes moisture from the air, cloaking streets in a dense, ghostly shroud. Above it all, the sun hangs low on the horizon, even at noon. It never fully rises, never fully warms. And yet, almost 300,000 people call this frozen place home. From above, the city looks patched together. Concrete blocks from the Soviet era, wooden houses with frost-covered walls, new glass towers that seem misplaced, like fragments of Moscow dropped here by accident. The houses stand on stilts. It's not a design choice. The ground beneath is permanently frozen, permafrost that goes down hundreds of meters. Build directly on it, and your building's warmth melts the foundation. Within years, the structure tilts, cracks, sinks into the earth. So Yakutsk rises, elevated above the ice, defiant. Car engines run 24 hours a day here, not by preference, by necessity. Turn off your engine in January, and it may never start again. Fuel lines freeze, oil thickens into sludge, batteries die. So the city hums, day and night, a symphony of idling engines. People dress in layers that make them unrecognizable. Fur hats, insulated boots rated to -70 degrees Celsius. Scarves wrapped so tightly, only eyes remain visible. Exhaled breath doesn't just fog, it crystallizes mid-air, falling to the ground as tiny shards of ice. Locals call it the whisper of stars. This is cold that shapes civilization. Antarctica has no cities, no indigenous population, no permanent residents, just stations. Metal boxes planted on ice, staffed by scientists and support crews who rotate every few months. The largest, McMurdo Station, houses about 1,200 people in summer. In winter, that number drops to 200. Here, cold isn't measured by weather forecasts, it's measured by records. Extremes that redefine what the human body can endure. The coldest temperature ever recorded on Earth, -89.2 degrees Celsius, July 21st, 1983. At Vostok Station, deep in Antarctica's interior. At that temperature, exposed skin dies in under 2 minutes. Breath freezes before it leaves your mouth. Metal becomes brittle, shattering like glass. There is no adaptation here, no generational knowledge of how to survive. Just technology, flown in from the outside world, keeping small bubbles of warmth alive in an ocean of ice. Antarctica is cold in its purest form, untouched, unforgiving. If Yakutsk is cold that humans learned to live with, Antarctica is cold that allows humans to visit, but never stay. Cold isn't a thing, it's an absence. The absence of heat, the absence of molecular motion. And at extreme temperatures, that absence changes everything. At -40 degrees Celsius, steel loses 30% of its strength. Rubber cracks. Plastics shatter. Lubricants stop working. In Yakutsk, every building is designed around this. Water pipes run above ground, wrapped in insulation and heated with steam. Hinges are oversized to account for contraction. Windows have 3 or 4 layers of glass. In Antarctica, the engineering is even more extreme. Research stations are built like spacecraft, sealed environments where every drop of water is melted from ice. Where waste is collected, not flushed. Where ventilation systems run constantly to prevent carbon dioxide buildup. Some stations sit on hydraulic stilts that can be raised as snow accumulates. Otherwise, they'd be buried within years. But cold does something else too. It preserves. Siberia's permafrost holds the bodies of woolly mammoths, frozen so perfectly that their flesh is still intact after 40,000 years. Antarctica's ice cores store atmospheric records going back 800,000 years. Tiny bubbles of ancient air trapped in layers of snow, telling us what the planet's climate looked like long before humans existed. Cold is a time machine, and in these two places, it's rewriting what we thought we knew about survival, history, and the limits of life itself. Siberia is not a country, it's a region. But what a region! 13 million square kilometers. Larger than Canada, larger than the entire United States, stretching from the Ural Mountains to the Pacific Ocean. If Siberia were a country, it would be the largest on Earth. And yet, for most of the world, it's a blank space on the map. A synonym for cold and emptiness. But emptiness is a lie. Lake Baikal sits in southern Siberia, cradled between mountain ranges. It is the deepest lake on Earth, over 1,600 meters at its deepest point. So deep that if you drained it, the water would cover the entire planet in a layer 5 centimeters thick. It holds 20% of the world's unfrozen fresh water, more than all the Great Lakes combined. And it is ancient, 25 million years old, formed as the Earth's crust pulled apart, creating a rift that still widens today. In winter, the lake freezes solid, ice thick enough to drive trucks across. But the ice isn't smooth. Cracks run like lightning. Air bubbles trap themselves beneath the surface, creating frozen cathedrals of crystal. And beneath that ice, life thrives. The Nerpa, the world's only freshwater seal, lives here. Scientists still debate how it ended up in a lake thousands of kilometers from the nearest ocean. The Lena River cuts through Siberia like a scar, over 4,000 kilometers long, flowing north from the mountains to the Arctic Ocean. In winter, it freezes solid. In spring, when the ice breaks, the river becomes a highway. Cargo ships carry supplies to remote villages. Ice floes the size of buildings crash into one another, grinding and splitting. This is Siberia. Vast, wild, alive in ways the rest of the world doesn't see. Antarctica is larger than Siberia. 14 million square kilometers, bigger than Europe. But unlike Siberia, there is no land beneath most of it, just ice. Kilometers of ice, pressing down with such weight that the bedrock beneath has sunk below sea level. The ice sheet is, on average, over 2 kilometers thick. In some places, it reaches nearly 5 kilometers. If all of Antarctica's ice melted, global sea levels would rise by 60 meters. Entire cities, New York, London, Shanghai, would vanish beneath the waves. But Antarctica isn't just ice. The Transantarctic Mountains cut across the continent, dividing East Antarctica from West Antarctica. Peaks rise over 4,000 meters, some piercing through the ice sheet like islands in a frozen sea. And at the edge of the continent, where the ice meets the ocean, ice shelves stretch for hundreds of kilometers. Vast platforms of floating ice, hundreds of meters thick. In 2017, one of the largest icebergs ever recorded broke off from the Larsen C ice shelf. It measured 5,800 square kilometers, larger than the state of Delaware, larger than the country of Brunei. For 2 years, it drifted through the Southern Ocean, slowly melting. By the time it disappeared, it had released trillions of liters of fresh water into the sea. This is Antarctica, a frozen giant slowly reshaping the planet beneath our feet. If Yakutsk is cold, Oymyakon is something else. A village of fewer than 1,000 people, tucked into a valley where cold air settles and stays, trapped by mountains that block wind circulation. The coldest temperature ever recorded in an inhabited place, minus 67.7 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, eyelashes freeze together. Saliva turns to ice before you can spit. Breath comes in short, painful gasps because your lungs can't process air that cold. And yet, life continues. Families have lived here for generations. Children go to school. Adults go to work. The village has a small shop, a post office, a few scattered houses. Why stay? The answer isn't simple. For some, it's stubbornness. For others, it's home. One resident, when asked, simply said, "Where else would we go?" This is cold that becomes identity. Norilsk sits above the Arctic Circle, one of the northernmost cities in the world. It exists for one reason: nickel. The mines here produce about 80% of Russia's nickel and 30% of the world's palladium. The city was built by prisoners in the 1930s, forced labor under Stalin's Gulag system. Today, it's still a mining town. But the cost is visible. Norilsk is one of the most polluted cities on Earth. Smelters belch sulfur dioxide into the air. In winter, the snow near the factories turns black. Trees can't grow for kilometers in any direction. And yet, 175,000 people live here. For 45 days in winter, the sun never rises. Darkness, unbroken, from mid-November to late January. Life adapts. Schools operate normally. Businesses stay open. People find ways to cope. Vitamin D supplements, light therapy, routines that create structure when nature offers none. This is Siberia's paradox. Places that shouldn't work, but do. At the South Pole, the Amundsen Scott Station rises from the ice like a spaceship. It sits at 2,835 meters elevation, not because of mountains, but because the ice sheet itself is nearly 3 kilometers thick here. The station is elevated on stilts, designed to let wind blow underneath, preventing snow from piling up. Every few years, the stilts are raised as the ice sheet grows. In summer, about 150 people live here. In winter, that number drops to 50. And for 8 months, they're completely cut off. No planes can fly in or out. Temperatures drop so low that jet fuel freezes. If there's a medical emergency, there's no evacuation. You wait until spring. Life inside is structured, almost military. Schedules are strict. Meals are communal. Entertainment is limited. Movies, books, games. But outside, the isolation is absolute. Stand outside at night, and the silence is so complete you can hear your own heartbeat. The air is so cold it feels solid. And above, the sky comes alive. The aurora australis dances across the darkness. Green, pink, purple, ribbons of light twisting through the atmosphere. It's one of the few compensations for the isolation. A reminder that even in the coldest, emptiest place on Earth, beauty finds a way. Antarctica is a desert. Technically, it receives less precipitation than the Sahara. What little snow falls never melts, just piles up, year after year, century after century. And yet, life persists. Emperor penguins breed here in the heart of winter, not near the coast, but deep on the ice, where temperatures drop to -60°C and winds howl at over 150 kilometers per hour. The males incubate the eggs. For 2 months, they stand motionless, balancing a single egg on their feet, covered by a flap of skin. They don't eat, don't move, just huddle together in massive groups, rotating from the outside to the inside, sharing warmth. It's one of the most extreme acts of parental care in the animal kingdom. Beneath the ice, Weddell seals hunt in darkness. They dive to depths of 600 meters, holding their breath for over an hour, navigating by sound and touch. They chew through ice to create breathing holes, gnawing with their teeth until the ice wears them down to nubs. Life in Antarctica isn't abundant, but what exists here is specialized, adapted in ways that seem almost alien. This is survival stripped to its core. Siberia is changing.
Permafrost that has been frozen for thousands of years is starting to thaw. Buildings tilt as the ground beneath them softens. Roads buckle. Pipelines crack. Entire forests lean at impossible angles, creating what locals call drunken forests. But the real danger is invisible. Trapped in Siberia's permafrost is an estimated 1,400 gigatons of carbon, twice as much as currently exists in Earth's atmosphere. As the permafrost thaws, bacteria wake up and begin breaking down organic matter. The process releases methane and carbon dioxide. Methane is 25 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. This isn't a distant problem. It's Tuesday. Literally happening now in real time, accelerating faster than climate models predicted. In 2020, Siberia experienced its hottest year on record. Wildfires burned an area larger than Greece. The smoke was visible from space. This is a feedback loop. Warming thaws permafrost. Thawing releases carbon. Carbon accelerates warming. And once it starts, it's nearly impossible to stop. Antarctica is losing ice. Not everywhere, not evenly, but in West Antarctica, the ice sheet is thinning. The Thwaites Glacier, nicknamed the Doomsday Glacier, is the size of Florida, and it's melting. Beneath the glacier, warm ocean water is eroding the ice from below. The glacier's grounding line, the point where ice meets bedrock, is retreating inland at a rate of about 1 kilometer per year. If Thwaites collapses, it could trigger a chain reaction. The glaciers behind it, held in place by Thwaites' mass, would accelerate into the ocean. The result? Global sea levels could rise by 3 to 5 meters. Not in centuries, in decades. Coastal cities would flood. Entire island nations would disappear. Hundreds of millions of people would be displaced. This is not speculation. It's physics. Ice melts when it's warm, and the ocean is getting warmer. But Antarctica also holds answers. Ice cores drilled from the ice sheet contain bubbles of ancient air, trapped in layers of snow that fell hundreds of thousands of years ago. Scientists can analyze these bubbles to measure carbon dioxide levels, temperature, and atmospheric composition going back 800,000 years. The record is clear. For the past 800,000 years, carbon dioxide levels have fluctuated between 180 and 280 parts per million, up and down in cycles as ice ages came and went. Today, carbon dioxide levels are over 420 parts per million, higher than at any point in the past 800,000 years, and rising faster than ever before. The ice doesn't lie. It doesn't have an agenda. It just records. And what it's recording is unprecedented.
Siberia and Antarctica are mirrors. One is inhabited, the other barely touched. One is warming, the other melting. But they're connected. What happens in Siberia's permafrost will change Antarctica's ice. What melts in Antarctica's glaciers will reshape Siberia's coasts. They are not separate. They are part of the same system, the same planet. And that planet is changing. In Yakutsk, winters are getting shorter. The fog doesn't last as long. Car engines don't need to run quite as much. Some see it as relief, others as a warning. In Antarctica, the ice shelves are thinning. Icebergs the size of countries are breaking off. The process, once measured in centuries, is now measured in years. What does it mean to be cold? For Yakutsk, it means resilience, a refusal to leave, even when every rational calculation says you should. For Antarctica, it means permanence. Ice so thick, so vast, it seems eternal. But nothing is eternal. Cold is not just temperature. It's history. It's memory. It's a warning. These two frozen worlds, one at each end of the Earth, are telling us something. Not with words, with ice,
with thawing ground, with rising seas. And whether we listen will determine what kind of planet our children inherit. Two frozen mirrors, one fragile planet. This is the ultimate Cold War. And we're all fighting it, whether we know it or not.